TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust. To secure your investment, you need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us.
TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind.
You're always safe with us.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
Good morning, radio listeners, and welcome to Inside the News here on WINNFM 98.9. I am your host for today's program, Kevon Brown. A happy Saturday and a happy start to July to everyone. I hope that everyone is enjoying their Saturday morning despite the bit of weather that we have been experiencing since yesterday afternoon. There's a bit of a weather system out in our waters, and that weather is likely to affect us a little bit for the next 24 hours or so. So I hope everybody is keeping dry, even though I know that Saturday is one of the busiest days when we get our things, certain things in order. All right, so for today's program, we are going to speak a little bit about some of the hot button issues that were in the discourse, the social discourse throughout the week. I think one of the most prevalent discourse topics in the discourse was related to the topic of travel restrictions. There have been people, specifically, that was one of the talking points or reasons for the demonstration for the Labour Party. They had their Freedom March yesterday afternoon, very well attended march, and one of the points for the march was to get rid of the travel restrictions, as we have been living with COVID, or say we have been living with COVID. Currently, we're experiencing a bit of a spike in cases. I think there are 100 and something active cases at this moment. And the conversation is, since it was announced that we should be living with COVID, that is the move that we should, go towards, where we get rid of the travel restrictions and just open up freely. But the CMO, in response to that question during the cabinet press conference earlier this week, said that action would be risky, would be a risky one. And so people have been, talking about how the amount of people at Music Festival, there were thousands of people that came to that attended Music Festival based on the preliminary numbers provided by the Honorable Wendy Phipps. There were like 4,000 to 6,000 people in general admission over the three each night, 4,000 to 6,000 people at the Music Festival. I don't know if any of you were attending, but I personally, when I went there, I didn't see a mask in sight, and yet it was truly a bumper crowd, people all over the place. So naturally, that could be an event for the spread of COVID, yet that situation was allowed because, we were told to take personal responsibility. So the argument is that since we were told to take personal responsibility with that case, why can't everybody take personal responsibility and just lower the restrictions to allow free travel and everybody take responsibility for their own health? So that has been an ongoing debate, the travel restrictions, and I imagine that will continue to be an ongoing debate But if anyone has any thoughts on that specific topic, the numbers to call in 466-0989, 662-0989, or 762-0989. Additionally, one of the other big ticket items this week was concerning the CBI program and projects under the CBI program that kind of dominated most of the newscasts. It dominated most of the press conferences that we held. There were two press conferences, the cabinet press conference and the premier's press conference. CBI kind of dominated that. That's been dominating the talk for the last week, actually the last 2 weeks probably. And I'm going to play a little bit of what was shared or said during the cabinet press briefing as it relates to the CBI. We get a little bit from the Prime Minister, as well as the CEO of the Citizenship by Investment Unit, Mr. Les Khan, and his explanation on how this whole CBI project and the prison and the different aspects of the program and how it works, for a little refresher for those who might not have known or might need a little refresher on how the CBI unit explains how the program works, how the prison is funded, what happens, how it happens. And then we'll be back to discuss that and talk a little bit about what we heard.
Emerge as the single largest generator of revenue for our country. Why then would two upstart ex-ministers engage in undermining it, when one of them has laid his claim to fame and wanting a fair share? So he's destroying it, the very vehicle on which he wants to rely to be able to do things for the people of Nevis. It doesn't make sense. It's an irrational approach by those who want to lead the country. And our people must be very mindful of dishonest politicians who would say anything and go to any extreme to score cheap political points. They know what they are saying is nonsense. They know it. And persons in the media need to investigate, get the information, and make sure the information is made available to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and the wider region. One of my colleagues called me and he said, I am concerned over those foolish statements being made by Mark Brantley and Sean Richards. I said, don't bother with that, man. People here not take. He said, you all may not be taking it on, but it's affecting all our CBI programs in the region because people are seeing us as what? The Caribbean region with about 5 CBI programs, Grenada, Antigua, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, and Nevis, and Dominica. And so when you criticize one, they lump us. They see these as shortcomings in the program. We are now considered the platinum brand. We have come a long way from 2014 when Dr. Denzel Douglas basically mashed up the reputation of our CBI program, destroy any goodwill in the international community. It was in May 2014 when the Treasury Department, FinCEN, took a decision to lay a charge against St. Kitts and Nevis, accused the Denzel Douglas administration of allowing illicit actors to participate in the program. Mogadam and all of these. It was in November of 2014 that the government of Canada took the hard and painful decision to withdraw visa-free access to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis on account of its displeasure with the management of the CBI program under Denzel Douglas. And it said it had no confidence in the Douglas administration. The Douglas administration then was doing all kind of ridiculous things with the passport, taking out the country of birth field so that persons could conceal the identity. It was going against the grain cardinal principles for the issuance of passport. And the two most powerful countries in our hemisphere reprimanded the administration and hurt us. So many people now have to struggle to get into Canada, who otherwise would have just bought their ticket, gone to Canada as easy, except for price, as if they were going to Jamaica, Antigua, or any other member states of the region. We have come a long way from that because we reformed the program. We improved the due diligence. We work with our international stakeholders. We traveled the entire globe in the first set of meetings. I walked with the Attorney General, went to London, meet the important people in the government of the United Kingdom. We went to Dubai, met with important stakeholders, began the process of rebuilding confidence. And now 2 persons, former members, ex-members of the cabinet, who should know better, is telling a lot of untruths and spreading misinformation which they know will not hold up. The man who helped us to reform the CBI is here. He's Lescan, and I would invite him to add any comment on this particular matter. But as far as this costing $2 billion, that is only in the head of those who are propagating this nonsense. Not $1 of the taxpayer money will be required to construct this new facility. And you ask me who will benefit? We have about 3, 4 different contractors out there. They are benefiting. You ask me who will benefit? It is TDC who is benefiting. It is Horsford who is benefiting. It's all the workers who have found work there on site. And in the other establishments that are supplying materials and other products of need, they are the ones who are benefiting from the project. And the country, of course, will benefit because we are going to see a boon in the construction activity of the country as a result of the prison being built over the next perhaps 2 years or thereabout. So there are no downside to us. Mr. Lescan.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Good afternoon. Prime Minister actually made all the relevant points, but I'd like to reiterate a few. The prison project and the alternative investment option was created to have a 2-pronged benefit to the country. One, as the Prime Minister mentioned, is an asset that is privately funded and gets transferred over to the state when it's completed. The second is the creation of revenue that will be put into the consolidated fund as sales in the shares or units of investments, as we call it, are sold. These units of investments under the alternative investment option for the correctional facility is scheduled, if all the units are sold, would be approximately, will be hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 2 to 3 years. This is a significant impact on the economy and to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, the numbers being bantered around of $2.2 billion, I think we need to break it down. 2.2 billion EC dollars. How did people come up with that number? It's made up specifically by the number of units investments that they assume that have been granted, times the price of 175,000. So if you take, let's say, 5,000 units of investment times 175, convert it into EC, you'll get $2.2 billion. To be specific, what the developer gets is not $2.2 billion. What the developer gets is what he can sell in the market at whatever price there is in the market. In the market, we're competing with the likes of Dominica and the other Caribbean islands, and even other programs outside of the Caribbean. And whatever price is there is what the developer will compete at and offer his units of investment. These prices, or the 175,000 that will be the face value, which is the government's price, has to be discounted, or commissions paid to agents out there who are very aggressive. The clients or potential investors know the price that St. Kitts is competing against Dominica or St. Lucia or Grenada, Antigua, and that price number goes down to what the developer actually receives. And this happens in the alternative investment option and also in the real estate market under standard real estate. So we're in constant competition against a price structure that is not necessarily the face value of what we have to offer. But we have to allow the developer to be able to complete his or her construction. Despite the price being offered in the marketplace, the government or the developer has to pay the government on an average $50,000 into the coffers. So this is very specific. That $50,000 comes straight into the consolidated fund, and as the Prime Minister mentioned, is used in an array of areas. We did go through a rigorous process in determining well, first of all, we had to change the legislation in order to allow infrastructure projects to be included under the CBI program. And that infrastructure project proposal started in early of 2021. Before any project was put forward, we discussed it, we proposed it, and it was discussed in cabinet, and legislation was passed. SROs were passed to legislate the alternative investment option. So when a project came along that we felt fitted the criteria of what was legislated, obviously that was put to cabinet again. So there was rigor around what we did. There's another point I need to reiterate here, and that is there is oversight over this project. The project is not just being willy-nilly managed by the developer. There are members of government agencies involved in project management and oversight of the timelines of this project. I have seen a project plan, and I have seen delivery dates that take us into 2023. I've also seen the cost of construction. Originally, there was the proposal that there was the suggestion that the project was going to cost about $40 million US. That's about 100 million EC dollars. And based on COVID and the cost of materials and so on, that number has actually increased to about 50 million US dollars from what I'm being told. Another point to note is that under the current, where we are in construction, at least 200 locals have been employed to date. And it's expected that by the end of this year, there will be about 1,000 locals employed in the construction of the prison. So I just wanted to elaborate on these points. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
That was the CEO of the Citizenship by Investment Unit and the Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris, during the last cabinet press conference earlier this week, speaking of the the CBI issue and the prison. A lot of questions have been asked, well, how much the prison was cost, and Mr. Khan, he said that the original budget for the project was 40 million, but because of extenuating global circumstances, the cost of the prison is now projected to be $50 million, juxtaposed to the the 800 and so million dollars that has been, or the 2.5 billion EC dollars that has been floating around as the actual cost for the project, based on some audio that was circulating a week or two ago from the former Deputy Prime Minister Sean Richards, suggesting that some 5,000 passports, 5,000 unit shares for the prison at a value of $175,000 each. That is where the huge sum of money came from. But another thing that was talked about during the cabinet press conference was when Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris made reference to a member for Nevis, the Nevis Island Administration, the Honorable Spencer Brand, and his involvement in a CBI project, which led to Mr. Brand giving a response to said statements made by the Prime Minister that was shared earlier this week as well. We're going to hear a little bit about that.
Fellow citizens, residents, and friends, good day. I have chosen to use this medium to address certain statements made by the outgoing Prime Minister of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Timothy Harris, at his minority government's press conference on Wednesday, June 29, 2022. Dr. Harris claims that I, Spencer Brand, as a sitting member of the Nevis Island government, am involved in the Citizenship by Investment program. Just to be clear, I became a member of the Nevis Island administration as an elected member of the Nevis Island Assembly on the 17th of December 2017. However, in 2008, my wife and I purchased some 5 acres of land from a Dr. Eustace Huggins at Coxheath Estate, St. John's Parish, Nevis, through a loan facility from the Bank of Nevis Limited. In subsequent years, I, in my capacity as an architect, sought to develop those lands. On the 12th of November, 2014, in a letter under the hand of the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Stedman Truss, from the Nevis Island government, headed at the time by the late Vance Winkworth Amory, responded to my application to develop those lands, and I quote, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Brand, we are pleased to inform you that we have made a recommendation to the federal government that your project at Coxheath be approved under the Economic Citizenship Program. Please note, however, that you will have to make formal application to the St. Kitts Investment Agency, SKIPA, for approval. I subsequently made application to the St. Kitts Investment Promotion Agency, SKIPA, as mandated by law. In a letter dated the 27th of November 2015 from Mr. Stanley Jacobs, Director, Investment Promotion at the St. Kitts Investment Promotion Agency, and I quote, "Dear Mr. Brand, we refer to your application seeking approved project status under the Citizenship by Investment Program and other incentives for your project Atlantic View Condos. Please be advised that your request was submitted to Cabinet and it has approved the following in principle, pending the approved drawings and confirmation of approved financing from the bank. A. Designation of the development as an approved project under the Citizenship by Investment Program. B. Permission to sell off plan, provided that an escrow account is established and evidence of the same is submitted to SKIPA and the Citizenship by Investment Unit. Please note that your request for use of the timeshare mechanism for 1,224 shares was not approved. We await the submission of the above for final approval of your application. Sincerely, Stanley Jacobs, Director, Investment Promotions. Over the subsequent years, there was correspondence between myself and Skipper regarding the scope of the development and the number of shares in particular. Excerpts from a letter dated March 5, 2021, from Mrs. Dorita Fritz, Investment Facilitation Director at the St. Kitts Investment Promotion Agency, and I quote, "Dear Mr. Brand, our agency refers to your application on behalf of Sun Valley Investment Limited, seeking an increase in the number of shares for its project, Atlantic View Hotel, located at Cox Heath Estate, Nevis. Please be advised that your request was submitted to Cabinet and it has granted approval for a total of 220 shares as per the following structure," end of quote, and the share structure was outlined. The Prime Minister has given the impression and sought to mislead the nation that this is a project that was only being submitted and approved since I became a sitting minister of the NIA and since Mark Anthony Graham Brantley became the Premier of Nevis. This is the furthest thing from the truth. This was a development that had the approval of the NIA since the 12th of November 2014 and the federal government in principle since the 27th of November 2015. Approval for this project was granted from the NIA some 3 years before I became a sitting minister in the NIA, and from the federal government in principle some 2 years before I became an elected member in the NIA. This is a 70-room hotel project with a conference room, a gym, a spa, a restaurant, a club, a deli, a mini-mart with swimming pool and parking. This is a development expected to provide employment for over 70 plus persons on completion. However, my wife and I have been unable to attract any investors to the project because we need to sell the shares at the full statutory authorized price in order to raise the capital necessary to construct the hotel. This is so because various schemes that appear to have the full support of the Harris government and the CBI theme have resulted in the sale of shares at a price well below the statutory authorized price of $200,000 or US $175,000 for the alternative investment option. The question must therefore be asked, ladies and gentlemen, what is the true status of the CBI program in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis under the current Harris regime? The question must be asked, ladies and gentlemen, why is it that on Nevis there are over 35 approved CBI projects and hardly anything has been built? It is now well known that while the law stipulates US $200,000 per share for developers, shares are being sold for as low as $15,000 US. Timothy Harris is aware of these schemes. Has he insisted that the sale price must be that which is provided under the law so that developers can have the necessary resources to develop their projects and to provide jobs across the landscape of Nevis? Is it the reason why many approved projects on Nevis are not able to raise the necessary financing to build out their facilities? As Prime Minister, what has Timothy Harris done to safeguard the CBI program so it can have the longevity and benefit to all people? To be clear, ladies and gentlemen, I am not one of those persons benefiting from the scandalous schemes that undervalue our passport. In fact, quite the opposite. I am a victim of the schemes because they have prevented me from being able to attract investors to my project. While the Prime Minister has sought to score cheap political points, my focus and the focus of all Nevisians must remain on the fair share for the island of Nevis. Nevisians must realize that this Prime Minister has no good intentions for the island and the people of Nevis. Let us, when the time comes, ensure that we put country above self, and rid ourselves of Dr. Timothy Harris and seek once again to move our country forward. Thank you, good day, and God bless.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Yes?
Jean,
Body spray's hot, boy. I can't take it.
well, it's a good thing I called. The TDC Home and Building Depots are having their Cool 'em Down sale with 20% discount on fans, AC units, coolers, fridges, and more to beat this heat, girl.
Girl, Betty, you're making joke.
No, so stop sweating and let's go to the store now.
Ooh, you come pick me up, because may want to miss the sale at TDC Home and Building Depot.
Yeah, man. And don't forget you can also shop online too, using shoptdcgroup.com.
Cool.
Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects or sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
And welcome back to Inside the News here on 1FM 98.9. You were just listening to the Honorable Spencer Brand's response to the topic of his CBI project that he's in charge of, that the Prime Minister raised at the last Cabinet press conference. He raised some quite some interesting points in his address, where he mentioned the difficulty of selling the shares for his project. He says, according to him, he has not sold any shares to start the project as yet, because he has to sell those shares at a market price, and then claimed that some shares for some CBI projects are being sold at as low as about $15,000 US. Of course, based on the scheme for the CBI situation, I think there are government fees that need to be paid, some $4,000 US and then another $7,500 US or something along those lines, based on the main applicant, and if there's a family, how big the family is, the amount of dependents that are in that family, whether they're siblings, children, etc., etc. So the Citizenship by Investment program remains a very, very sensitive issue. I remember earlier, sometime after the Russian invasion on Ukraine, the European Union or the European Parliament sent out a warning to countries that offered citizenship by investment programs to either stop their programs or to augment their programs or face visa restrictions for the countries involved in the European Union. And then Caribbean leaders, especially the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister from Antigua and Barbuda, speaking out about how the citizenship by investment programs across the region, especially in Antigua and Barbuda, play a huge role in government revenues and economic development and opportunities. I think he mentioned that the CBI program in that country is about 10 to 15% of their GDP annually. So the CBI CBI continues to be a very, very, very divisive topic around the region, specifically here in St. Kitts and Nevis, as we are in campaign mode for the next general election expected within the next month or so. I think at some point next week, we have a month until the elections have to be called, or within that month, we have a month left where a date has to be set, and people are waiting for that date with bated breath. Many of us are waiting for the Prime Minister to mention or set a date so that people, can get ready and know exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, whose ideals, whose mandates, whose policies align more with what they are trying to accomplish. So those are very, very, that date is very, very important for a lot of people, whether that's personally or, professionally, where the debate continues with overseas voters as well, and overseas voters coming in, which was kind of one of the reasons why the speak of getting rid of the travel restrictions in country, where people would still need to quarantine, especially non-vaccinated individuals would need to quarantine for a week. That kind of hampers any overseas voters, anyone in diaspora who would have to take off time from work to come and vote a week. Plus, your voting period, that is a bit tricky for some individuals. So that's why the calls for the removal of those travel restrictions are coming forth for people who want to come home a lot easier, come home in a way pre-pandemic era. We don't have to quarantine. We didn't have to think that hard about how we're going to manage to spend a week in quarantine or spend a day in quarantine or whatever the case may be, and then figure out how to get back home or get back to the country or whatever part of the world they were in. So that feeds that debate. And of course, others responded to what Minister Brand said. So while Minister Brand was rebutting the claims made by the Prime Minister and seeking to explain himself and his involvement in a CBI project that he said was started before he became a minister within the Nevis Island administration, J.D. Keynes, the candidate going up against Spencer in the Nevis Island administration, she made a statement, as well as leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, made statements in rebuttal of Minister Brand's statements. And we're going to listen to those statements now.
Yesterday, July 29th, during a press conference organized by the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, we learned from Prime Minister Harris that a sitting member of the Nevis Island government is pursuing a US $44 million private project, and that project was supported by his colleagues in the Nevis Island Assembly, Nevis Island Administration rather. I have since called on that MP, who has been named by Prime Minister Harris as the current parliamentary representative for Nevis 1 Charlestown, to come forward and offer some clarification on this matter. I have asked what is really going on. Could it be that the Prime Minister misspoke when he named the member for Nevis 1? Could it be that the Prime Minister totally pulled this story from the sky? Could it be that it is true and we may have another Alexandra Hospital debacle on our hands? All I want is clarification. We deserve an explanation. In fact, one worth US $44 million. I will add that it is really disgusting that we continue to hear rumors of our ministers seeking to excessively enrich themselves by raping the system while many of us suffer. We need answers because it is not their government, it is our government. Now, according to the Integrity in Public Life Act, a public official commits an offense of abuse of office if he or she A. seeks or accepts personal or private benefit for himself or herself or a member of his or her family or a person associated with him or her, whether or not the benefit places him or her under an obligation to the person giving or offering the benefit. B. Uses public funds or resources for private purposes, including party political purposes. C. Fails to act impartially or gives undue preferential treatment to a person or group of persons. D. Misuses information acquired in the course of his or her duties. E. Acts in a way that allows or might reasonably be thought to allow a conflict of interest to arise between the public duties and private interests of the public official. If these allegations are true, the sitting MP has committed grave injustice and ought to be reprimanded. For me, this reprimand should take place at the polls, where the good people of Nevis 1 Charlestown reject him at the polls whenever the Nevis Island Assembly elections are called. And to go further, many have been asking if it had not been for Prime Minister Harris's statement at the press conference, if we would have known about this project. I maintain that this is unacceptable.
That was J.D. Keynes, a candidate for the Nevis Reformation Party in Nevis, and she is the opponent of Spencer Brand in the upcoming elections. And she basically said, well, she called out Minister Brand for his involvement in the CBI project and questioned whether if it wasn't addressed by the Prime Minister, would the people know about the project or not. Something tells me that persons did know about the project, just probably wasn't widely known. And she suggested that if people have questions or qualms or issues with Spencer Brand involved with a project that's supposed to be worth $44 million US, it should be reflected in the polls. However, the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Daniel Hodge, called for a stronger action in her statement as it relates to the Spencer Brand CBI issue.
And now for a statement from Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, leader of the Nevis Reformation Party.
My fellow citizens and residents, to those local and in the diaspora alike, I bring you warmest greetings from the Nevis Reformation Party. The people of Nevis woke up on Wednesday, June 20th, to the disturbing news that a member of the Brantley-led administration was the owner of a $120 million CBI hotel development project here on Nevis. This revelation came for the first time to the ears of our people via a press conference hosted by Dr. Timothy Harris, the Federation's finance minister. Minister in the Nevis Island administration, Mr. Spencer Brand, as uncomfortable as he was forced to confirm his involvement in this project. Many have concluded, and I agree, that the smell of impropriety, greed, and corruption pervades this project and the decisions surrounding it. The admission of his involvement and the feeble attempt to put a case to the people of Nevis fell woefully short of honesty and must be rejected, as this is yet another example of the propensity for impropriety that continues to plague the CCM administration and hampers the true growth of Nevis. Instead of cautioning Mr. Brand, his fellow cabinet members, including the Honorable Premier, sought to promote this personal benefit of a sitting minister. The facts are that for over a year the minister requested, was granted, and accepted 220 shares from the federal cabinet. All of this was forced from the mouth of the minister after questions were raised by the Prime Minister, and no amount of political gymnastics can erase those facts. This attempt to withhold conflict of interest information and to hide it under the guise of a come-clean statement has not convinced the NRP, and neither should it persuade you, my people. The CCM government has not issued a statement on this matter, and that speaks volumes of the intent of the Brantley administration. They will do as they like with our money and believe that they are above reproach, without responsibility and without accountability to the people of Nevis. I say to you today, the deceit must stop. Here and now, the NRP is calling on Minister Spencer Brand to resign his position as a minister of the NIA immediately. The people of Nevis deserve better. We must defend Nevis and what we stand for. We do not stand for the ongoing deceit of the CCM administration, and it is time for CCM to go. Thank you, and God bless the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Class, it's that time of year again to get everything you need for back to school. Go to the TDC Home and Building Depot in St. Kitts and City Drugstore Nevis Limited, or shop tdcgroup.com. Shop and get deep discounts for all your school essentials. Backpacks, notebooks, pens, pencils, school bundles, computers, and more. While you're there, be sure to donate to Shop and Share to help the less fortunate and stay ahead of the grade. Oh, and don't forget, Flash Sale Fridays. Now that you know, class is dismissed. See you at the TDC Home and Building Depot and City Drugstore Nevis Limited. Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
And welcome back to Win FM. You're joining me for Inside the News. I'm your host, Kevon Brown. Welcome back to the program. Previously, you were hearing from two candidates from the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, the leader, and one of the candidates, J.D. Keynes, addressing the CBI development that Spencer Brand is involved with. A very big point of contention, a topic that was on the tongues of the people when Prime Minister, the Honorable Timothy Harris, brought up the development during the press conference, the cabinet press conference earlier this week. All of this kind of tied into the whole prison situation and how the prison is being funded, and the sale of 5,000, the alleged sale of 5,000 passports, and the need for clarification on that situation. And I think all of this, this talk about information and clarification is important, because that's how rumors are spread. All of these rumors are going to be spread because people don't have enough information to go off of. The prison construction was started, and it was like a huge surprise to everyone. There was no grand groundbreaking ceremony where people got to ask questions about the prison, get details about the prison, and people were questioning why that prison, why that project being started now, and they were juxtaposing it to the building of the Bastia High School or a new hospital, as people were crying out. The Bastia High School was talked about. Apparently construction is supposed to start soon, because the thing that was being the hold up was insurance, and apparently that has been cleared up, so the construction of that project should get underway, but we're still waiting for a specific date on that construction, when the groundbreak is going to be, when that construction will start, and how soon after that construction will the students for the Bastia High School, who have been displaced from since 2012, can be in their new Bastia High School, state-of-the-art Bastia High School. But that's it for the first half of Inside the News here on WINNFM 98.9. We're at the 12 o'clock hour, so we're going to have to break for the midday news, and when we get back, we will get more on some of the other issues that were being spoken about, that were being addressed over the past week in the news. So stay tuned to WINNFM 98.9.
You found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, and Carib Brewery. We now bring you the headline news.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world, whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous. You can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air, we get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises at 466-9595.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Dealing well with a local reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
With over a century of perfection behind the Mackeson name, a smooth blend with perfect balance and richness, it's no wonder Mackeson Triple Stout has a legacy of perfection. enjoyed the world over. Introducing our new look with the same great taste. Macassan. All hail the king.
Please drink responsibly.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
With the WIN headline news, I am Kevon Brown.
And I am Yolana Weeks.
Making the headlines, Prime Minister Harris says Team Unity faced challenges since 2015, accuses Brantley of undermining him.
Unstable weather conditions expected for St. Kitts and Nevis within the next 24 hours. Contestants revealed for the 2022 staging of the Nevis Culturama Mr. and Miss Talented Youth Pageant. Carnival Queen Nikira Nichols to represent St. Kitts and Nevis at the JC's Queen Show.
Grenada's Keith Mitchell to be sworn in. New Grenada Prime Minister raises questions about oil deal and more from Primetime Caribbean. Internationally, in Ghana, the imposition of tax on electronic transactions has left both merchants and consumers concerned. The government admits the 2-month-old policy has not brought in the expected revenue. Now, the details. Former Team Unity partner Mark Brantley has dismissed claims that he supported another Team Unity member for the position of Prime Minister following the 2015 National Assembly elections. Brantley on Thursday, June 30th, 2022, at one of his monthly press conferences, dismissed the claims that were made by Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris at a political rally hosted by the People's Labour Party on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. Dr. Harris said,
"Within 24 hours of the elections of 2015, Mark Brantley tried a palace coup to depose me as the Prime Minister of this country. You think it just happening? And I stood up to them. I stood up to them. Those worthless vagabonds. That is who they are. And I said to them, with their forwardness, that I, who just get them elected, must come to a meeting. Come to a meeting to do what? They want to have discussions over the prime ministership. Well, I sent back the message to them. I will be sworn in as the Prime Minister of this country because that is what you said to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Wynne asked Brantley for a comment on the allegations, and he said,
I'm not aware of that. I had no such indications in 2015. If you realize, I was one of the chief proponents of Team Unity. I campaigned in St. Kitts, I campaigned in Nevis, and he was the person who was chosen to lead Team Unity. CCM was led at the time by the Honorable Vance Emery, not by me. So I don't know what he's talking about in relation to that.
Brantley, the former Foreign Affairs and Aviation Minister in the Team Unity cabinet, however, confirmed that he did not support Dr. Harris for the position of Prime Minister following Team Unity's win in the June 5th, 2020 elections.
If he were to say 2020, I would say he's right. because I said to the team in 2020, let us change directions. I'm not going to resile from that. I don't stand at this podium to mislead anybody. As Premier of Nevis, I always come and I try to tell the press and the public the truth. In 2020, I said, let us change gears, because I had already seen all the signs exhibited by Timothy Harris. That position did not find favor, and so we proceeded to have him again as Prime Minister. It will be for history to judge whether or not I was right, because 2 years later we see what has happened.
After only 7 years of taking office, Team Unity has fallen. In early March of this year, key Team Unity members started to publicly challenge Dr. Harris on allegations of him secretly coveting a third term as Prime Minister, which they say goes against the agreement arrived at in the 2014 Charlestown Accord that he would only serve 2 terms, and pass the baton to People's Action Movement leader Sean Richards. On Tuesday, May 10th, 2022, Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris, via television and radio, sacked 6 of his colleagues from their ministerial portfolios, including his deputy, Sean Richards, who was overseas attending a funeral when he got the news. Former Education Minister Janelle Powell was at WINFM's studio on May 11th, 2022, making an appearance on our ILNT morning show when he received his letter of dismissal as a Minister of Government. While Parliament has been dissolved, paving the way for fresh elections in the country within 90 days, Prime Minister Harris is yet to announce the date for polling day.
Senior meteorologist at the Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw International Airport, Mr. Elmo Burke, has confirmed that St. Kitts and Nevis will be experiencing unstable weather conditions over the next 24 hours. There is a 60% chance of showers and scattered thunderstorms. The weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis, valid up until 8 a.m. on Sunday, July 3, shows that winds will be coming from the east to east-southeast at 12 to 24 miles per hour and gusting to at least 34 miles per hour. There is also a small craft advisory in effect, as the seas will measure 1.8 meters or 6 to 9 feet. The sea level pressure is 1015.5 millibars or 29.98 inches. Increased moisture and instability in the atmosphere is associated with the passage of a tropical wave, which will continue to present cloudy conditions, occasional showers, and hazardous seas across the region, which includes the Virgin Islands, the Leeward Islands, Windward Islands, and Puerto Rico. The Nevis Culturama 2022 Mr. and Miss Talented Youth Pageant, scheduled for Sunday, July 24, will feature 14 representatives from 7 primary schools on the island. The event is sponsored by the Republic Bank Eastern Caribbean Limited and will be hosted at the Nevis Cultural Complex at 7 p.m. St. Thomas's Primary School will be represented by Alicia Douglas and Rejon Roy Williams. The Elizabeth Pemberton Primary School will be represented by Tinijah Lawrence and Kian Blake. The Joyce Lynn Libert Primary School will be represented by Amanique Chapman and Devontae Freeman. The Charleston Primary School will be represented by Akaija Alder and Carice Farrell. The Maud Cross Preparatory School will be represented by Angenique Pemberton and Omar Williams. The Violet O. Jeffers Nichols Primary School will be represented by Zariana Claxton and Dijon Phillip, while the Ivor Walters Primary School will be represented by Jadenique Griffin and Ronaldo Finch Jr. The Mr. and Miss Talented Youth Pageant returns this year following a 2-year hiatus due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The 2019 winners are Kikana Charles and Lishan Mattis of the Ivor Walters Primary School. The reigning St. Kitts Nevis National Carnival Queen, Nikira Nichols, will be representing the Federation at the 59th production of the JC's Queen Show at Carnival City in Antigua on Wednesday, July 27, 2022. Showtime is at 8 p.m. for the cost of EC $50. The pageant will be held under the theme, Unleashing the Potential Within, through resilience and determination. Nichols is one of 6 crown contenders in the upcoming pageant. Representing the 5 other islands are Nia St. Clair from Montserrat, Emmanuel Miquel from Haiti, Brianna Anthony from Antigua and Barbuda, Krana Khan from Trinidad and Tobago, as well as Wenaya Vernule from St. Lucia. The 2022 JC's Queen Show chairperson, Miss Ayana Dorset, confirmed that the ladies are expected to arrive in Antigua on July 23, 2022. On that day, they will engage in various activities, including orientation, a brunch where they will pick their numbers for on-stage performances, visit to sponsors, as well as a visit to the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Gaston Brown. The ladies, however, will depart on July 28. The JC's Queen Show was not hosted in the years 2020 and 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The reigning queen is Shanakisha Francis of Antigua and Barbuda.
In regional news, Grenada's Keith Mitchell to be sworn in. New Grenada Prime Minister raises questions about oil deal and more from Primetime Caribbean.
Former long-serving Grenada Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell will be officially sworn in as opposition leader on Monday. That announcement came Friday through the Government Information Service. The four-term Prime Minister lost power in the June 23 general elections after his party, which completely dominated the parliament in the last 10 years, only took 6 of the 15 seats. During the campaign, Dr. Mitchell had indicated that he was considering retiring from politics, and some had suggested that he might not have taken up the position as opposition leader. Party sources say Dr. Mitchell is likely to remain as both opposition and political leader of the new National Party, at least in the immediate period. Grenada's new Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell says he is eager to find out what has happened to the country's pursuit of oil and gas. On the eve of the general elections in 2018, then Grenada Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell said explorers had found oil and gas reserves in the country's waters south of the island. There were some reports subsequently in foreign media of exploration deals being worked out. But the Grenada government has reported nothing in the years since about the situation. The new Prime Minister said he needs to find out more.
I want to find out what happened to the oil and gas. I think every citizen of Grenada deserves an answer. I honestly don't know.
Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell said it is a matter his new administration must get to the bottom of.
Oil and gas, located just down the road from Point Saline, can't just disappear. So I'm saying, to me, as a Prime Minister of the country, I think I'd be abdicating my responsibility to the citizens without finding out and without saying I made all efforts to find out what happened to this oil and gas, where did it disappear to? Is it genuinely a case where there's no commercial value to it, etc.? And at least come clean, say this is what we did, this is what we found out.
He said the exploration of the resource will be crucial to national development.
If there is oil and gas, and if it's available in commercial quantities, then I'm absolutely certain every Grenadian would want their share of it, would want to see the revenues be used to help transform Grenada, to help give us better education.
Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley has brushed aside suggestions that the country will not be able to fulfill its obligation and repay a 7-year loan from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. She has also dismissed concern that the island is in a precarious debt situation. Mottley says the critics are seeking to excite Barbadians and speaking without context as it regards the $928 million to be repaid by 2029. Mottley responded to critics who have raised concerns in recent days that Barbados is in a precarious debt situation. However, without naming anyone, Mottley expressed disappointment that some people were speaking without context.
More and more, as I read sometimes in newspapers, I wonder whether people have lost perspective and lost context. For to hear that $900 million from an IMF program is something that will cripple a country when that constitutes a mere 6.4% of its debt, and at no stage will garnish more than 4% of the revenues in servicing the debt, tells me that that figure has been used to excite persons without context. Because if context was placed, then you would realize that that amount is not only one of the smallest amounts, but that the capacity to service the debt is more than manageable.
The Bahamas government has confirmed that health authorities are investigating a second suspected case of monkeypox. At a news conference, Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Michael Darville said that a Bahamian national is suspected of having the virus. He says the new suspected case has a history of contact with someone from a foreign country. Last month, the health minister reported that a foreign national who traveled to the country was being closely monitored by health officials and suspected of having the disease. He has since been flown out of the country. Dr. Darville confirmed that the foreigner had indeed tested positive. The former Prime Minister of Belize, Dean Barrow, says he is satisfied with the $185,000 in damages awarded to him by the High Court following a botched commission of inquiry. The public hearings held last year to investigate the fire sale of government assets under the previous administration produced a controversial report that resulted in a pair of lawsuits being filed in the Supreme Court. Former Deputy Prime Minister Hugo Pat was equally successful last week in a defamation claim brought in the wake of the report being published. As a result, the government will have to pay for the former senior ministers an estimated $350,000 in damages. In Haiti, hundreds of supporters of the former president Jean-Bertrand Aristide have gathered in the capital to demand his return. They are angry about political instability and a worsening crime rate. Al Jazeera's Victoria Gattensby reports.
This is a country without a functioning government. Its economy has collapsed, its streets are run by gangs, and violent crime and kidnappings have surged. These supporters of former President Jean-Bertrand Aristide say only he can save Haiti.
We've taken to the streets to appeal to President Aristide because it's him we want. We want Aristide to be the transitional president because people are suffering.
Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere with a long history of political turmoil. Haitians voted in their first free election in 1990, electing Aristide, but he was ousted in a coup less than a year later. After the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse last July, Ariel Henry took power. Henry has broad political support from the international community, but he's been criticised for saying he has no plans to step down until the country holds new elections.
If the international community is to be a true ally of Haiti, we are demanding they collaborate with President Aristide to save us from crisis.
Haiti is still struggling to recover from a devastating 7.2 earthquake that destroyed the southern tip of the peninsula last year. Crippling economic conditions are likely to worsen as the political crisis drags on.
When Aristide was president, life wasn't so expensive. Rice and oil were cheap. Insecurity makes everyone afraid. I'm tired of it. We want Aristide to be the president of the transition.
Supporters of Aristide say they'll continue to protest until they get the change they say the country so desperately needs.
We now bring you these international reports.
It's been a chaotic 2 months for Ghana's mobile money merchants after the introduction of tax on electronic financial transactions. Fear and uncertainty are keeping customers away.
Over 4,000 agents have lost their job because myself, I was having 3 outlets, and because of this introduction, 2 of the outlets is closed.
Introduced 13 years ago by the country's telecoms companies, mobile money allows customers to deposit and receive funds via their phone and use that money for internet transactions, all without involving the banks or government, till 2 months ago when a 1.5% tax was applied to funds. Merchants have already started to feel the pinch. After 2 years of brisk business selling clothes online, these university students are closing shop, selling what remains of their stock on the streets.
Nowadays, people don't really like to do their online transactions because of the e-levy.
She says it's been weeks since she received an order.
2 months after launch, government officials admit that the electronic transaction levy hasn't generated as much as expected. Some reports suggest that money from the tax isn't up to a quarter of the projected revenue. Yet, government is pressing ahead with it despite public protests.
Ghana's government defends the tax as necessary.
As the general economy, experiences some constraints, we are of the view that being able to appropriate some resources from that area will help, first of all, our fiscal situation and then the broader Ghanaian economy.
We should stop looking at Africa.
Experts say the tax is being poorly implemented.
What I mean by the design is faulty. Taxing savings, it's not discriminatory. It's just, all over.
When mobile money was introduced in Ghana in 2009, tens of thousands of people in rural areas got access to reliable financial services. It helped propel Ghana's cashless banking system. But the addition of this new e-tax has deterred many users and stifled online markets, and has been one of the main causes of the recent unrest in the capital, Accra. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Koforidua, Ghana.
More than a quarter of Kenyans living in arid and semi-arid areas are now facing high levels of food insecurity, according to government and United Nations data. Prolonged drought in East Africa and the war in Ukraine, which we mentioned a few minutes ago, are adding even more pressure to household budgets. Some of the poorest can just about afford one meal a day. Our Africa correspondent Catherine Biarahanga reports from Nairobi.
East Africa's biggest metropolis can be unforgiving. This is how Florence has been forced to make a living, collecting and selling scrap from this dump site. She's fallen on hard times after her small food store was shut to make way for a new expressway. Florence earns just 85 US cents a day. Even then, she says she could still feed her children twice a day before food prices shot up.
Nowadays, I am only able to cook supper. We cannot manage to cook lunch because prices are very high.
So Florence now rarely shops at her local market.
Onions are used in almost every family meal in Kenya. 6 months ago, these three would have cost you about 9 US cents. But now the price has more than doubled. And even though this is one of the cheaper places to buy vegetables in Nairobi, many families have been priced out of the market. They can no longer afford them.
Food production is down in Kenya because of failed rains. And now traders here have to pay closer attention to the war in Ukraine, as it's already hitting the industry.
There is a war between Russia and Ukraine. It has affected us Kenyans because some farm inputs, like fertilizers, come from there. Now they have become more expensive, and many farmers are unable to meet the production cost, and that has driven prices up.
A few hundred meters away, Catherine, who is unemployed, is struggling to put food on the table. She moved here from Kitui in eastern Kenya. During tough times, her mother would have sent her food from the village, but because of the drought, that's not possible.
It's very dry in my rural village. There is no rain. When it rains, there is food, and she is able to send me some food. But right now, she is also depending on us to send her. It's very dry and there's no food.
Over 4 million people in Kenya are facing hunger. But these statistics focus on rural areas and do not include vulnerable communities in urban centers.
The issue is that when we have a drought situation and when we have food prices going up, and when we have an economy that is still recovering, then we have huge populations within the urban areas that are just as affected with food insecurity.
The government and its international partners are now assessing how many people in cities are affected by the recent food insecurity, in the hope of bringing them some help. Catherine Biarahanga, BBC News, Nairobi.
President Biden has promised that the federal government will act to protect women's rights if U.S. states seek to prevent them traveling to get an abortion. Speaking at a virtual meeting with Democratic state governors, Mr. Biden said he believed that some states would attempt to arrest women who crossed state lines for abortion access. He went on to say that only Democratic victories in the midterm elections would give Congress the power to restore federal abortion rights.
I think people are going to be shocked when the first state that tries to arrest a woman for crossing a state line to get health services, and I don't think people believe that's going to happen. But it's going to happen, and it's going to telegraph to the whole country that this is a gigantic deal that goes beyond. I mean, it affects all your basic rights. If extremist governors try to block a woman from traveling from her state that prohibits her from seeking medical help she needs to a state that provides that care, the federal government will act to protect her bedrock rights through the Attorney General's office.
Well, there are now fears that in states limiting abortion, police could try to access location histories on smartphones owned by women who are pursuing plans to terminate a pregnancy. And with this in mind, Google says that in the coming weeks, it will start deleting information when its systems identify a trip to an abortion clinic. Jeffrey Fowler is a columnist with the Washington Post. He told us more about the specific concerns around law enforcement agencies being able to access personal data.
By U.S. law, anytime that a company has access to data, a court can order them to hand it over. It requires a warrant, and there's a process, and there's some negotiation. But the end of Roe versus Wade, that abortion decision in the United States, really, I think, opened people's eyes to on a mass scale that wow, companies like Google know so much about us that any of those data points that they collect about us could then be, sought by prosecutors and used as evidence of a crime. So again, we're talking about, we've seen previously cases in the US where Google searches are used to prosecute crimes, text messages, locations on a map, all sorts of things, all of which Google collects as a regular order of business about its users. It's a wake-up call, again, for all of us that, creating these giant businesses that are based on harvesting our personal information and make money off of it has in many ways created the kind of accidental dystopia, right? They're selling these, they're taking our data and saying, okay, they're going to give us in exchange useful products. And we get that, but we're not thinking about all the other things that data can be used. It's surveillance capitalism, and we're really starting to pay the price for it.
You were listening to the WINNFM Headline News on 98.9. Our top stories were: Prime Minister Harris says Team Unity faced challenges since 2015, accuses Brantley of undermining him.
Unstable weather conditions expected for St. Kitts and Nevis within the next 24 hours. Contestants revealed for the 2022 staging of the Nevis Culturama Mr. and Miss Talented Youth Pageant. Carnival Queen Nikira Nichols to represent St. Kitts and Nevis at the JC's Queen Show.
Grenada's Keith Mitchell to be sworn in. New Grenada Prime Minister raises questions about oil deal and more from Primetime Caribbean. Internationally, in Ghana, the imposition of tax on electronic transactions has left both merchants and consumers concerned. The government admits the 2-month-old policy has not brought in the expected revenue. Thank you for listening.
That was the WINNFM Headline News. The Headline News was brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, and Carib Brewery.
Do
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tilly Wall with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world, whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous. You can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air, we get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises at 466-9595.
Found the Sound 98.9 FM. People make the world go
Buying your medication is easy with City Drugstore's curbside pickup. WhatsApp our certified pharmacist at 662-8769 with your requests. For prescriptions, take a clear photograph and send for review. We will engage you in dialogue and then provide a quotation and link for payment. You can then pay via TDC's online payment portal. And once the transaction is complete, you'll be notified that your pickup is ready. Yes, it's that easy. Send your WhatsApp message to 662-8769 to order your medications today with City Drugstore's curbside pickup service.
People make the world go
Welcome back to Inside the News here on WINNFM 98.9. I am your host, Kevon Brown, for this week's program. I would like to offer an apology for anyone who's attempting to call in to our program. Apparently, we have some phone issues. While I would absolutely love to have you call in and voice your opinions on some of the topics that I was speaking of earlier or any other topics of concern during the week, we are unable to facilitate any phone calls, so you can join in on the discussion. We will attempt to get the phone situation rectified as soon as possible so that we can continue to hear the voice of the people on our programs. We absolutely love our call-ins. They offer some interesting perspectives. So just like to apologize for that, but we're working on the issue. All right. So earlier, I was speaking about some of the hot button issues going on in St. Kitts and Nevis as it relates to what's been covered in the news, what's been on the minds of the people, what's been the most talked about. One being the request of people to get rid of the travel restrictions in light of the fact that we're already living with COVID. We have one of the highest vaccination rates or coverages in the Caribbean. 78% of adults have 2 doses. And, plenty of people, thousands of people throughout the past 2 years have had the COVID-19 virus, whether it's the main variant or the main strain, or subvariants that were here in transmission, the Lambda or the Omicron. Plenty of people have had COVID-19. So there is a level of immunity within the population. So people are asking, why can't the travel restrictions be removed? We had music festival, that 3 nights plus White Sands. So it was a four weekend situation where tons of people were congregating in large crowds. So, why not lower the travel restrictions, especially with the upcoming elections and the welcoming or the return of overseas voters, as we know overseas voters play a large part in the election results or the polls, because we have a lot of Kittitians and Nivisians in the diaspora who would want to come home and have an impact on the elections. And even that topic is divisive in and of itself, whether people believe that overseas voters should have a say considering they don't live here, or the fact that they are citizens and they have a right, they are citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis and they have a right to exercise their franchise to vote in the elections. So, the argument has its sides. Everybody is of a different opinion on why overseas voters should be allowed or shouldn't be allowed. But that has been on the minds of the people, and people want the election date. And I think that is the most That is the most salient issue, that people are waiting patiently for the election date to be called. We're about 30 days out for the 90-day period that the election day is supposed to be called within. Campaigning has been heavy. The door-to-doors, the constituency offices, the launch of the constituency offices and the candidates, or in PLP's circumstance, the launch of their vision centers, as they call them. The various amounts of rallies that's been happening throughout St. Kitts and Nevis, throughout the constituencies, where people are trying to rally the support of the people, trying to sway those who may be undecided or who may have voted differently, etc., etc. The whole great democratic process where the candidates are trying to win over as many people as possible before the election is called. Yesterday, Labour had a freedom march, as it was dubbed, where they were marching in protest of Timothy Harris and the way he is currently running the government with 3 elected members and 3 appointed members. Part of the debate is to call the election, make it a free and fair election, removing restrictions so that people can come home freely, whether they're vaccinated or not, so that they don't have to worry about quarantine issues and other policy issues. CBI, the building of the prison, the Bastia High School, all of the policy issues that exist within St. Kitts and Nevis that are on the minds of the people. What does the next government look for St. Kitts and Nevis? How is the next iteration of St. Kitts and Nevis supposed to look as it relates to its government, and who will be running this country moving forward? In that regard, some people are of the minds that it will unfortunately be a minority government. Now, naturally, every political party believes that they will win the next election because confidence is a part of this. Confidence is a part of the strategy. If you don't have confidence in the thing that you're trying to bring forth, it will ultimately fail. So naturally, the political parties that are vying for control of the government believe that they're going to win. However, some people are also of the opinion that it might be a minority government. Surprises will be had. Based on, the musings that are going on. Regardless, people want the election to be called so that, we can get back to business. Because while government is functioning right now, it is functioning in a reduced manner. It is not functioning in its fullest capacity, which means certain things can't be done. Legislation can't be passed, that kind of thing, until a new parliament is formed where the parliamentarians can go in and debate on specific issues, laws, legal framework, the electoral and constitutional reform that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis have been calling for a while now. And without a parliament, without an active parliament, those issues cannot be addressed. Constitutional reform cannot be addressed. Electoral reform cannot be addressed. The Freedom of Information Act cannot be properly operationalized. And then there's the issue of the Integrity in Life Commission being operationalized as well. All of these issues, I think, need a full working government, not in this stunted situation that we are in, so that the country can move forward fully with a fully operationalized government where every constituency is represented properly within the government and within Parliament. Every ministry is properly taken care of and not being neglected because too many ministries are put on too few members that make up the cabinet right now. So I can understand the call and the cry for the election dates so that a proper government, a full operational government can be formed with all of the powers vested in it, but based on the Constitution to operate St. Kitts and Nevis. Taking a different swing, another topic that was on the minds of people within the Federation was this rumor that was going around. And you know how rumors take on a life of their own. The rumor where it was suggested that non-nationals have been coming into the country with newly issued passports, and the claim is that these people are coming in an effort to pad the voter list in whoever's favor. So voter padding, another issue, and I think it's become such a wild thing because specifically they're saying that passports have been given out to people. The question was raised during the cabinet press conference by our WIN's Devon Cornelius and the permanent secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Mr. Osman Petty. He gave a response in regards to that supposed issue.
I will speak on 2 points. First of all, my office has no information whatsoever about undue numbers of persons coming into the country, from non-nationals coming into the country with St. Kitts and Nevis passports. The Immigration Department has not reported any such thing to me. We have not seen anyone who should not have a passport entering the country. And most non-nationals who have come to St. Kitts come with a passport from their own country. Now let me say, all of us here, most of us here would have traveled. Many of us would have had passports. It is not unusual for somebody to have a new passport. People get passports, they don't use them for a year or two. When they travel, it is still looking new. It does not mean that they just got the passport. There may be, for example, someone in the DR, Dominican Republic, who is a national, he's a citizen by marriage, and who got a passport a year, 2 years ago, and is just using it, the passport look new. That doesn't mean that somebody just gave them a passport last week. So the first point I want to make is that we have no information whatsoever. I must mention here that I heard a voice note going around about 71 persons coming in with the passports from St. Kitts and Nevis on Saturday. And I should say here, even though there was a press release, that on Saturday 6 persons came into this country with passports from Haiti. And they had Haitian passports, and they had visas to come to St. Kitts, 6. And so these type of sensational statements are really uncalled for and misleading. The second thing I want to say before I sit is, how do we process a passport here in St. Kitts? And I am 99.99% sure that no one can generate a passport very easily from our passport office. Normally it takes 3 persons to process a passport. In an emergency situation, the supervisor and 1 other can do the passport. But normally, the normal process is for 3 persons to process 1 passport. The passports, when they come in, and all our passports are supervised, controlled from the Canadian banknote, which is based in Canada. The passports, when they come in, they're locked away. To get into the passport, to remove any passport, the supervisor and our CBN trained technician, both of them simultaneously have to go to the locker and input their passwords and codes to open it and remove passports. The number of passports taken out are recorded in the passport office. They're also recorded down in my office, and they are monitored and recorded at CBN in Canada. And so, if, for instance, ex-passports are taken out, then it's going to crash the system because CBN right away will realize that something has gone wrong. We can't print. And so any talk about people coming or going out with bags of passports is just foolishness. You just cannot get it done. No one person can go into the system and remove a passport, remove any number of passports. And the numbers are recorded in sequence. And if passport number 10 is printed, the next one has to be 11. If it's not 11, then CBN is going to raise an alarm, raise 11. And so I want to say to the general public and anybody who is interested that any talk about bags of passports leaving the country is real foolishness. Thank you very much.
That was the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of National Security, Mr. Osmond Petty, speaking on the rumors of people coming in with new passports and its relation to voter padding and all of that rumor that was going on. The problem is now rumors kind of tend to take on a mind of their own. Especially a rumor of this magnitude in the season that we are in, of election season, and who knows where these rumors came from? Who knows of the legitimacy of these rumors? While Mr. Petty did offer an explanation as to, how passports are, issued, the fact that they can't be easily issued, that there's a regulatory body that is monitoring the issuance of passports, etc., etc. Rumors tend to take on a mind of their own, and rumors tend to inform a lot of people on how they think about things and how they relate to certain things, regardless of if the rumor is substantiated or not. An opinion is often already made based on such rumors, and that is why the sharing of information is so important, and transparency is so important on how these things operate, how the CBI issue is dealt with, getting the public to properly understand how the CBI program works in relation to how projects are funded, where the money is coming from, how the investment units are divvied up, what is available for who, the demographics of the citizenship by investment persons who were approved through the program, kind of, explaining how these projects work, and the whole issuance of passports, explanation on how the passports are issued, great, but we can't deny that there are sometimes holes in the cracks in the system, cracks in the wall. I'm not suggesting that there is a crack in the wall here, but I can't say that there could never be or would never be, because it has happened in the past in various different forms throughout the globe. So to say that it's impossible to happen here, I think would be, ill-advised, which is why the rumors kind of hold teeth, because, it's not impossible. Now, while we're on the topic of elections and election season, Grenada just had their election 2 weeks ago on June 23rd, and they elected a young prime minister in one Mr. Dickon Mitchell of the National Democratic Congress. They were victorious on the 23rd over Dr. Keith Mitchell, who was in power for the last 10 years. Last 10 years, he had total control over the government, because I think for the last 2 elections he won all of the seats in Grenada. Now the situation is the new prime minister and his party, the National Democratic Congress, they won 9 seats, and Dr. Keith Mitchell's party won 6. I think is how much he won. So Dr. Keith Mitchell is now officially the opposition leader. I think he was already sworn in as the opposition leader in Grenada, 75 years old. Apparently he has no intentions of retiring right now. He's going to operate as the opposition leader and still the leader of his party going forward for the next 5 years as the new Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, leads the government. We're going to take a short break, and then when we get back, we're going to tune into a little interview, the first public appearance of the new Prime Minister of Grenada, Dickon Mitchell. He did an interview with Callista Farrier from The Narrative. So we're going to hear a little bit of that interview and what Prime Minister Mitchell has planned for Grenada going forward for the next 5 years, what he sees as imperative to go forward to develop the island, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be adjusted, what needs to be improved, what needs to be advanced, that sort of thing. But we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and we'll hear a little bit from the new Prime Minister of Grenada.
TDC Financial Services, we're here for you to help you make your dreams come true. Whether your needs are big or small, we'll support you with them all. TDC Financial Services, we are strong. TDC Financial Services, this is where you belong.
TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
People make the world go
And welcome back to Inside the News here on WINNFM 98.9. I'm your host this afternoon, Kevon Brown, and thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Despite our phone issues, I am sure our regular listeners are listening in, and I'd like to thank you for always tuning in and supporting us here at WINNFM on Inside the News. Miss hearing your opinions, but as I mentioned, we do have some phone issues that need to be looked at, or we would have been taking calls to hear your views on what I have been speaking about for today's edition of Inside the News. Before the break, I was speaking of the new Prime Minister that was sworn in Grenada, Mr. Dickon Mitchell, who the OEC has congratulated for his win, and they exclaimed that the election was, a clean and fair election. They were pleased about the peaceful conduct that the election was taking place in. And now we're going to hear a little bit from the new 44-year-old Prime Minister, very young. Very excited about that, having, a young man as the leader of a country. I think that speaks volume, and I think a lot of people are happy about, this new blood in Grenada, and I think that will probably, breed this new wave of, maybe bringing in a bit younger generation to lead these countries, as they have different perspectives, they have different ideas, innovative ideas to develop the country and push our country forward. So now we're going to listen a little bit to the new Prime Minister of Grenada in his interview with Callista Farrier on The Narrative from Primetime Caribbean.
Welcome, viewers. Welcome to our first exclusive interview with the new Prime Minister of Grenada, the Honorable Deacon Mitchell, sworn in just a few days ago. I'm going to be talking to him about what's to come, his cabinet makeup, which we have been awaiting with great anticipation. By the time we broadcast, that would already be out, and how he's finding government so far. Prime Minister, thank you so much for accommodating us in these early days. You are here now. What's your number one priority?
Thank you. Well, immediately, obviously, it's to appoint a cabinet. Once we are through with that, we would want to open Parliament as quickly as possible. And then the third issue would be to ensure that the statutory bodies, which essentially carry out a lot of the government functions, are properly staffed in terms of board members and in instances where you need management, because it's key to ensure that we have the personnel in place to deliver the mandate that we've been given. After that, the next priority would clearly be looking to address some of the short-term programmatic issues that we've campaigned on, like the pensions, etc. So that's really the priority.
Now, are we looking at bigger government or smaller government? Have you shrunk your ministry?
We are certainly trying to look at smaller government. We are mindful of the fact that we are a small nation. We're mindful of the fact that we need to be efficient with the use of our resources. So as much as possible, we are seeking to shrink. Certainly the ministries, I think currently there are about 14 ministries. We are trying to get the number beneath that. For all intents and purposes, I think we would probably be around 12. There would be one or two ministers of state within ministries, but for the most part, we are trying to keep it tight and keep it smaller.
And how were you able to balance keeping it tight with the expectations of your team? You have 15 people who campaigned with you, 9 people who won their seat. Already out there, I'm hearing grumblings about people getting ministries or not getting ministries. What sort of balance have you struck?
No, well, we're a team. From day one, we knew that not everyone who runs or even becomes an MP may necessarily get a full-fledged ministry. That was always understood amongst us. It's a teamwork. We have to make sure that campaigning is one thing, being popular is one thing. That doesn't necessarily correspond with an entitlement to a ministry per se. But we're satisfied that all of the team members understand that, and we are looking as much as possible for best fit. Yes, there are political realities. Political realities being number one, you have 9 seats in Parliament, and you have to, in order to govern, you have to legislate, and you have to have a legislative agenda that your team supports. So that's probably the biggest political reality that we face. But outside of that, we are satisfied that both when it comes to our MPs and our senators, we are all on the same team. Each MP will know what the other portfolio is. Each senator will know whether he or she is a minister or not. That has already been discussed. Each member of the team knows that. So it's not really an issue. I think each team member is prepared to serve as best they can in any area that they're suited for. Without a doubt, we are new to government, and so we all will have to go through a steep learning curve as part of the process. So I don't necessarily think that anyone has a predisposition to a particular ministry per se. I'm a lawyer by background. Claudette, for example, is a lawyer by background. Andy's a businessman. Lennox has been in the public service as a public servant working in finance and so on. David has been an educator. Jonathan has been an educator. So it really depends at the end of the day on us ensuring that we pull together, support each other, and I think that's the key thing for us.
Now, one of the earliest things you did was meet with senior civil servants and the Commissioner of Police.
Yes.
And now that you are looking from the inside at government, what is the state of the nation?
I think the challenge, I think there's one obvious challenge, the human resource aspect of the public service, as well as the police force, needs to be addressed, and with some alacrity. There are a fair amount of acting appointments. There's a fair amount of varying terms and conditions under which people work. You have contract workers, you have unestablished workers, you have established workers, all kinds of categories. I think, and from what I've gathered already, you have people doing the same jobs, sitting next to each other with completely different terms and conditions of service, even though it's the same job. And I'm saying different terms and service, crucially in terms of pay and benefits as well. So we recognize that this has to be addressed. At my meeting with the senior managers of the public service, I made that clear, that we will have to tackle this issue. There's no point in pretending. We may not be able to solve all of it, but we certainly can solve some of it. And I also indicated that the ability to solve some of it depends exclusively on us. On those of us who are leading, those of us who are managing, we know what the challenges are in our departments, we know what the staffing issues are, we know what the complaints are, and it's for us to come up with the solutions. I made it clear we are not going to be hiring any foreign consultant to tell us how to fix our public service. We work here, we live here, we know the jobs we need to do, and I expect therefore for the solutions to come from the bottom up. So I think that has to be addressed because I think it affects productivity, it affects people's willingness to go beyond the extra mile to make sure that they can deliver. And I think once we indicate to the public servants that we are prepared to tackle that issue, I think it would make it easier for us to deliver because they would recognize that we are taking the issue seriously, we are attempting to address it so that they in turn can deliver on behalf of the public. So I think that's one main issue that has to be addressed, hence the reason why it was discussed with the senior managers. As well, the police force, I think we have to accept there are a number of things that the police face outside of the obvious. The terrible working conditions, physical buildings, you know, a lot of the issues that we raised on the campaign, lack of insurance. The health and wellness of police officers is an issue. I raised the issue of alcohol abuse, physical health of officers, the need for housing for many of them. But crucially, the ability to educate and advance themselves and to have a situation of fairness and professionalism within the police force is also of priority to me. I also raised the issue of the gender balance within the police force. In fact, at the meeting that I held with them yesterday, it was obvious. There were, I'm sure, about 40 males and 3 females. The females I'm absolutely sure of because it was only 3. And even prior to greeting them, I raised the issue because I think it's something that has to be addressed and has to be more reflective of our society. So we recognize that the HR issues have to be addressed. In fact, the police has no HR department really. And as a modern institution trying to do modern policing, I think that is something that has to be addressed to help the administration of the police deal with some of the issues that we've raised. Pensions were raised by the police officers, and that clearly would apply to all public officers as well. I am happy to indicate now that based on the briefing I've had from the Ministry of Finance, I feel ever more confident that we will be able to deliver quite speedily on the payment of the pensions, particularly the retroactive aspect. I'm looking forward to sitting down with the unions to make sure that our expectations match their expectations, because I think that's the first issue to grapple with, and to make sure that the data the government has, that it's shared with them, or that if they have their own data that they shared with us, so that we can make sure we're not leaving anybody out, that if we say it's 100 people, that it is 100 people.
What are your expectations as far as the pension is concerned?
No, my expectation is that we will pay the pensions, and that we will be able to do so quite speedily once we're able to sit down and have the conversation with the unions.
The borrowing at low interest to deal with the retroactive is still on the table?
It's still on the table, but we may not even have to get there, based on the information that's been provided to me so far. So that is why I say that it would be important, however, for us to meet with the unions first, to make sure that the quantification of what we believe is due that we have is shared with them, and second, that whatever quantification that they have, that they share it with us, to make sure that we're all on the same page.
What number are you getting from your finance?
Well, at this stage, I'm not prepared to disclose the number publicly without first sharing it with the trade unions. Yeah.
But it looks as if we can handle this out of our consolidated fund, the government can. So it may not be as high as was estimated.
Yes, certainly the retroactive part. There are worst case scenarios, which is if everyone who's entitled to retire retired. I don't expect that to happen, because you may retire, but at the end of the day, your pension generally is never larger than your salary. And if you have, your normal obligations, mortgage, taking care of kids, car payments, other associated stuff, it would not make sense. So I don't ever envisage a worst case scenario where if it's 1,200 public servants would all get up and say, thank you, we're retiring. That would only happen if the pension was so fantastic, and that's obviously not the case. So worst case scenario, yes, it would be a lot of money. We don't expect we will have a worst case scenario, but specifically to the retroactive part, which I think was the main concern we spoke of in terms of borrowing, it does not appear to be as massive as has been publicly suggested.
But are you considering a staggered payment at all, even if we are paying out of the
Well, we certainly would, because cash flow is always an issue. You always have to manage your cash flow. You as a government, you have to be prudent. Certainly in our case, we've got 6 months left on the original budget. So certainly you would want to manage the cash flow and have staggered payments. Again, we would want the unions understanding on that, and we hope we'd be able to get it once we are transparent and open with them as to what we found, and once they get the opportunity to examine it as well.
Have you already set a date to meet with to have that meeting?
No, we have not set a date for obvious reasons. We wanted to have our cabinet appointed. Once the cabinet is appointed, then obviously myself and any other relevant minister who would be treating with the matter would then seek to engage them.
And of course, you've chosen an attorney general who's being announced today as well.
Well, tomorrow, yes.
Well, we are broadcasting.
Okay.
We are recording to broadcast. So
okay,
yes, so timeline will be a bit all over the place. Now, one of the things that you spoke about in your inauguration address was cleaning house. You gave the impression that there'll be some house cleaning taking place on boards and so. Have you already begun to look at that and to move people around or to invite people to resign or anything like that?
Well, in some instances, people have begun resigning. I think that's the appropriate thing to do, particularly when it's obvious you're a political appointee. I don't think we should pretend that the prior administration ran its house a particular way, which to a large extent was, in my view, highly dependent on political loyalty, not competence, not ability to deliver or even drive the mandate of the particular statutory body. Not everybody necessarily would fall into that category. Some people may be in fact loyal and have the competence and would have done a fantastic job. Some of the boards, the persons who sit there hold office ex officio by virtue of the law. So for instance, there are lots of boards where the PS in finance automatically sits on the board, or the Comptroller of Customs, the Comptroller of Inland Revenue. I mean, obviously in those instances, that's who will have to sit. So some persons have resigned. Some probably will just not resign. We will have to reconstitute some boards. So here's what we are planning to do. There are certain statutory bodies that are mission critical, where you have to address it urgently, because it's so critical to the functioning of the state. And so you have to have persons in place. In those instances where people resign, obviously we look to fill the positions as quickly as we can. Where they don't resign, we will reconstitute the boards as quickly as we can. There are some instances where, having examined the boards, we may, for the most part, be satisfied that the board can remain in place. And if that's the case, instructions have been given. And so I can give one public example. We are satisfied that for now, the board of the Port Authority is functioning properly. We believe they had received an extended mandate up to the end of July. And so from my perspective, and I've so instructed the PS in finance as well as the chairman of the board, there is no reason for us to change the board, certainly up to the period of their tenure, which we believe is end of July. So I'll give that as an example where there is no need really to take any action, and it's testimony to the fact that we wish to be inclusive and we wish to be merit-based, regardless of who appointed the board, regardless of whether they in fact may have their own particular political allegiance. That's one example. There are others where clearly either the entire board or significant members of the board are going to have to change. What we want to be able to do is classify the statutory bodies according to importance, according to how critical or urgent some of the issues need addressing, and particularly for some of those which are not that critical. We really do want to open up and invite Grenadians to apply, to send their CVs, to express their interest in being prepared to serve on those boards. We are planning to set up a specific email address as well as a form and make that available to the public online and at ministries where people can come in, send their CVs and say, I'm prepared to serve on a board or a statutory body. This is my background. This is where I think I can help. We'd be in a position to look at those, and then if positions become available, offer it to people. But there are other things we want to do as well. It's not just that. We want to, for example, as time goes on, encourage our citizens to become certified and qualified to serve as board members. So for example, the Eastern Caribbean, I think, Securities Exchange Commission or the Regulatory Exchange Commission has a directorship program where you can get some training and become certified as an accredited director. We want over time for citizens to make use of those opportunities. It may mean perhaps contributing towards the cost or having some sort of fund that contributes towards the cost of helping people to get the accreditation, because we want to make sure that when people sit on boards, they understand their obligations, they understand their fiduciary duties, and that they can actually deliver and serve the entity as good as they can. And it obviously would benefit you to have the accreditation, because then you can serve on boards in the region and so on, given that we have a lot of regional entities that operate within Grenada on an OECS level and CARICOM level. So that is kind of how we really want to approach it. Of course, there would be some political appointments. We're a political party. But to a large extent, when we say we want to have merit and openness and inclusion drive it, we really mean that. So we've already begun looking at designing the form that people can use, looking at setting up the email address, and critically, we would have a particular ministry responsible for that, because it's important to mobilize and galvanize Grenadians and make sure that you use the energy and the enthusiasm.
A new ministry, you mean, or just
a new ministry.
What would it be called?
You'll find that out when the minister is announced. We're not disclosing it just yet.
And that is being announced in the initial
yes, that will be
cabinet
announced in
appointments?
the initial cabinet approval, yes.
Okay.
So there will be some not business as usual approach to our ministries.
What are some of the boards that you have identified where there'll be a total cleaning of the house? Have you identified any such?
I can't, off the top of my head, say so, but there are some that have some major issues, as in the entities themselves, that have major issues that we have to address. And clearly, the fact that they have the major issues is may be testimony to the ineffectiveness of prior boards, or just the sheer length of time that these issues have persisted and not been solved. The Market International Importing Board, for one, is probably in a state of severe illness. There's no other way to describe it. It's bankrupt. The government has had to essentially continuously pump money and pay off its debts. I don't think the farmers in Grenada want to hear of the Market International Importing Board. It has a monopoly, for example, on sugar, and it can't pay for the sugar. I mean, if there's one thing Grenadans consume, it's sugar. So if you have a monopoly on the supply of that and you can't even pay your own suppliers, it basically means there are major issues that we need to address. And in the interest of full frankness, I even think there was a strike of some of the workers at MNIB between yesterday and today. But I think it was perhaps a bit of a misunderstanding, and we have been able to assure them that whatever agreement that was reached during the tenure of the prior board and the prior administration, we will honor it. It was an issue to do with salaries. So I'm identifying MNIB as one, for example, that has to be addressed. The gravel and concrete is another one. I don't know if it's true, but I've been told by a contractor here that there are parts from machines that have broken down. No one is doing anything about it, and so they can't get particular size of gravel and so on. So entities like that, which play a crucial role in delivering aggregates and so on, obviously has the potential to handicap and hamstrung the construction industry. So we have to jump on that immediately and address it. So these are just some of the examples. The Postal Corporation is another example. It's an entity that has become shrouded in mystery. It's the only way I could put it. You know, at one time I heard it was being sold. Grenadians still ask who owns it. I think a lot of the workers at the Postal Corporation themselves are completely at a loss as to, is it a statutory body or not? Who owns it? Who doesn't own it? So some of those entities we clearly will have to look at extensively and thoroughly with a view to revamping, revitalizing, and maybe in some instances commercializing to make sure that they're successful.
Now, what about Grenlec? What are your immediate plans for Grenlec?
I mean,
given that it's also a shareholder company.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the key thing, there's no question the board of Grenlec is going to be changed. And then we're going to have to make a deep and thorough analysis as to what we want to do with Grenlec. I think in the 12 months that the government bought back the WRB shares, in my view, it has not been in the best interest of Grenada. Clearly, it was an in my view, ill thought out approach, and I could give you an example. You know, the government took a hostile approach to WRB, at least from 2013 when it won the elections then. And sometimes when you take a hostile approach to someone, they're not just going to sit by and allow you to ride roughshod over them. So if you look carefully at what has happened, to a large extent from 2013 to when the government bought back the majority shares, there was no real capital reinvestment in Grenlec, because essentially the owners of the company, the majority owners, recognize they're at war almost with the government, or at least there's a cold war going on. And so they are not going to fatten the calf that you want to take from them. And so essentially, when you look at what would have happened, there's been very little capital reinvestment back in the company because they recognize the government was trying to get them out. So when you look at the age of the engines, for example, most of these engines have been around for a very long time. And in fact, the same year that the government bought back the shares, one of the engines had to be replaced at, I think, a cost of maybe $16 million or plus dollars. There are 5 other engines that need replacing and would have to be replaced over the next 5 years. Assuming an average cost of $16 million, or anywhere between 16 and 20 million, that's $100 million. So you've just spent $161 million to acquire the majority shareholding, and then you have to find over another 5 years, another $100 million to just keep the entity operating at the same standard it was operating before. That doesn't make any sense, right? So we faced with a situation where we are going to have severely depreciated and severely aged engines. You're going to have to find the capital to recapitalize the company effectively. And that's why when you have the opportunity to negotiate, you sit and you negotiate, and you don't act as I'm in power so I can do what I want. Because what you've done is, we live in a society where there are rules, there are laws. If you sign a contract, you have to abide by the contract. You can't decide because I'm the government I can break it. When you break it, it's the taxpayers who face that challenge. So we
But
definitely.
how are you going to deal with the Grenlex situation?
No, well, I think at this stage I can't give you a definitive answer. I certainly would say my inclination is I'm not satisfied, even with an NDC administration, that the government should be the majority shareholder. Right? This is energy. It is a highly complex, highly capital-intensive industry. And so to me, what we need to look at is find a strategic partner or strategic shareholder in conjunction with the Grenadian shareholders, because you have to remember the National Insurance Scheme, the Grenada Ports Authority, and at least another 1,600 Grenadians are shareholders of that company. They've depended over the years on being paid their dividends. They've depended over the years on having a well-run company. And the employees have benefited, have been well paid, and for the most part, are probably some of the highest paid employees in Grenada. So what you want is a strategic partner that can allow the company to continue on that prior path of being well-run, profitable, where the employees are well taken care of, where we have a reliable supply of energy, and at the same time begin the process of transitioning to renewables, because that's also critical. As long as we're burning fuel, we're subject to the vicissitudes of the ups and downs of the cost of oil. And so it's important for us to have a strategic partner who wants to also invest in renewables and who wants to follow our policy goal of saying we need to have as much renewables penetrating our grid as possible. So that is the direction I think we are likely to go. And we really do want to push the renewables or any other form of alternative energy that is feasible in Grenada. So that is really what ideally the approach we would be taking.
But that is more long term. I mean, we can't have engines failing on us and load shedding and.
No, well, then absolutely. So in that case, if we need to, if you have to buy the bullet, you buy the bullet. Which means if you have to recapitalize the company and you have to, I don't see it as long term, frankly. Let me just back up a little. I actually think we could, once we do it properly, within 6 to 12 months, get a strategic partner who would come in, acquire a significant portion of the shares. You'd want a partner who clearly is already in the energy business and who's also has a strong renewables footprint. And I think that could happen in 6 to 12 months.
Any such companies on your radar yet?
No, not at this time. Simply because it's early days, we haven't had the time to look at that. But that's certainly one of the things we would look at.
All right. I'm speaking to Prime Minister the Honorable Deacon Mitchell.
If you need protection, you'll need one who you can trust to secure your investment. You'll need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us.
TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind.
You're always safe with us.
People make the world go
You are listening to the newly elected Prime Minister of Grenada, Mr. Dickon Mitchell, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, the newly elected 44-year-old Prime Minister of Grenada, in his first, one section of his first sit-down interview, first public appearance, since he's been sworn in as the Prime Minister for Grenada. He was speaking with Callistra Farrier of The Narrative about some of the things he's hoping to accomplish in his new post as Prime Minister and the new makeup of the administration for Grenada, 9 to 6 seats. Kind of a healthy opposition in that regard. So I imagine, the parliamentary discussions and debates will be very robust in that country going forward after having, 10 consecutive years where one party was dominant within the government. So we heard a little bit about some of his plans, some of the issues that he plans to tackle, whether it's short term or long term. So we look forward to hearing more from the newly elected Prime Minister. We had a very, robust show. We covered a bevy of topics today as it relates to entry requirements, the Freedom March that Labour held in protest of, certain ongoings in the government and how it's being run and things being done under the Dr. Timothy Harris-led cabinet in its, truncated or smaller makeup with 3 elected officials and 3 appointed officials, and how it's operating on a minimal basis, considering we don't have a full bevy of officials, elected officials operating within the cabinet in government, and parliament is dissolved, so there's no legislative discussion in that regard. So government is kind of operating very much in a shallow manner at the moment, and people want the elections to come forward. A bunch of other topics, CBI, passport issues, government officials involved in CBI projects, and claims of greed and corruption and that type of thing all throughout. Well, it's been more than this week, but it kind of reached another level and is now affecting another portion of the St. Kitts economy in the CBI program, which funds a lot of the projects in St. Kitts and Nevis. So quite a bit of things happened this week, and we look forward to more information coming forward in the coming weeks as we get closer and closer to whenever that election is going to be, because we know campaigns can get a bit, I think at no point in a government's history is it more transparent than when elections are around, because everything is up for grabs, all the secrets are out. So we look forward to see what other information comes to light as it relates to the ongoings of the government policies that people are hoping to implement if and when they win, and what the makeup for the new administration here in St. Kitts and Nevis looks like on the heels of the snap election that is imminent here in the Federation. Thank you so much for joining me here on WINNFM 98.9 for this week's edition of Inside the News. I've been your host, Kevon Brown, and stay tuned for more of our programming. Later this evening, you will have our newscast, our evening newscast, and tomorrow, stay tuned for the bench meeting with Kenneth Bob, Hina with Alonzo Alexander and Atiba Byron, and our week in review, wrapping up our top stories for the week tomorrow evening. So thank you so much for listening to WINNFM, and stay tuned.
WINN is